return to open session. In the closed session, we discussed possible settlement negotiations and/or strategy related to litigation expenditures. Based upon discussion during the attorney-client session, the board will be taking no action. We need a motion to adjourn the attorney-client session. Motion by Mr. Shaw, seconded by Mrs. Brill. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. This brings us to the two workshops for today. But before we get started, would you all please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I understand that She's not on yet? Okay. So, Ms. Bass, would you please take the roll?
District 1, Barbara McQuinn. Here. District 2, Chuck Shaw. Here. District 3, Karen Brill. Here. District 4, Erica Whitfield will be joining us by phone momentarily. District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews, absent. District 7, Deborah Robinson.
All right, we have quorum with 5 board members present. We need a motion so that when Mrs. Whitfield comes on the line, she can join the meeting by phone. Motion made by Mr. Shaw, seconded by Ms. McQuinn. Any discussion? All in favor, all opposed, motion carries 5-0. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, at this time, thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. I'll turn the first workshop in financial literacy over to Deputy Superintendent and Chief of Schools, Keith Oswald, and I'll allow him to introduce his team. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy, and good afternoon, board members. We're very excited to be here today to talk to you about some really important work for not just our students, our entire community around financial literacy. With me today is Aaron Standish, who is our district financial literacy specialist, who really came to the district from Palm Beach Central about 5 years ago because of work that you are aware of, that we work with our funders on a regular basis. And about 5 years ago, and Louise Grant is here in the audience today with the Mary and Robert Pugh Public Education Fund. She brings together a number of our partners who were talking about this issue of financial literacy. So through that work, they've funded Aaron's position for the last 4.5 years in our district, and he's been able to build a lot of capacity on this issue. And why this issue is so important, before we get started in the workshop, just some statistics. According to the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, 76% of millennials are considered financially illiterate. Average college debt per student has doubled over the past decade, $30,000 average currently, and credit card debt has increased 25%. And according to the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, 26% of Americans have saved $0 for retirement, while the median savings for those approaching retirement is only $110,000, which is equal to roughly $310 a month for life. So we know that that's not good for our community, for here locally as well as nationally. So we've done a lot as a district to address this particular issue. So at this time, Aaron will go through and talk to you about how we've been building capacity here in our district for our kids.
So thank you, Mr. Oswald, and I appreciate the board hearing about financial education today. K-12 financial education has typically not been a traditional part of the curriculum, and yet we know from numerous studies over the past few years that our students want it. There have been study after study over the last years in which students who are 18 to 24 years old, they've recently graduated from our schools, and they get asked, what's the one subject you would wish you would learn more during your formal schooling? And overwhelmingly, they respond with something to the effect of money management. And so I'm thankful that the school district has thrown some support behind that, and we've accomplished quite a bit in the past few years in that vein, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I want to first talk about why it is so important to include financial education as part of our curriculum. Financial illiteracy is not just a local problem, it is not just a state problem, it is a national problem. And it has consequences on entire communities. One financially illiterate person does not just affect that individual, it can affect the entire community. We know today that consumers are assuming greater responsibility for their own retirement savings. The traditional defined benefit pension plan is all but extinct for new employees. We're lucky as public school teachers to still have that. It's a nice benefit. But for most new employees in the private sector, it doesn't exist anymore. Yet, as you heard Mr. Oswald say in the opener, almost a quarter of Americans have $0 saved for retirement, which is hard to believe. And many of them know that. You see in the next number, about almost 70% of Americans have a pretty good idea that they're going to outlive their retirement savings. In other words, that their money's going to run out before they pass away. Right? So what we've tried to do is set up a cumulative financial education program in the school district of Palm Beach County. And we know from research that cumulative financial education does work. There has been a recent longitudinal study that studied students in 2 different counties that were side by side in separate states. One of the states had a financial education requirement, the other one did not. A few years later, when they looked at those students, the students that were living in the county that had the financial education requirement, they had higher credit scores, right? They had a higher net worth, and they had more saved up for their retirement than the students that did not have that financial requirement had. Currently, the status in our schools, the requirements in our schools, I should say, the Florida statute that lays out the high school graduation requirements, it does require all of our high school economics courses to contain a component in financial literacy. That is a required course at the 12th grade level. So they all do have a component in financial literacy, but do understand that component was added to an already existing semester-long course with no extra time added in to that course. That also applies to our accelerated economics courses. So that would be our AP, our IB, our ACE, our dual enrollment. They also have that requirement with a few exceptions in there. And there are also now standards. It is also part of our Next Generation Sunshine State Standards for Social Studies. There's 4th grade, there's 8th grade, and there's 9th through 12th grade standards as well. As we've stated, we are very fortunate in the School District of Palm Beach County to have had this grant in which our community partners came together. We are currently in the 3rd iteration of the grant, which started at the end of the 2014 school year, and we've re-upped it twice since then, and hopeful to re-up it a 3rd time coming into this upcoming school year. Our partners, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our partners, because this simply isn't possible with them. Our largest funders of this initiative, the Mary and Robert Pugh Public Education Fund, which has been a partner every year that we've been doing this initiative. The Community Foundation of Palm Beach and Martin Counties, the Ferris Foundation, the Education Foundation of Palm Beach County have all supported this in multiple years of this initiative. In the current iteration of it, the Pew Fund, again, is one of our primary funders. Along with this year, we have the Stiles Nicholson Foundation, and we were also able to take in 2 private individuals who I had a couple meetings with, were impressed with the work that we were doing and wanted to also join in and be a part of the effort. So we're very, very pleased with that. And along the way in those years, we've had a few additional funding partners in some of those years as well, and a few of those are listed there. The Ann Goss Foundation, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, Capital One, Vanguard, and the University of Wisconsin have all been a part of this at one point or another. So we've done a pretty good job of building a coalition of funders to get behind and support this work. In terms of what we've accomplished with this grant, or what we seek to accomplish, we have 3 overarching goals. The first is to increase opportunities for students in terms of their access to financial education. The second one is to increase the number of teachers qualified to teach financial education. That coming into this, that's by far our number 1 impediment, is finding confident and qualified teachers to do the work. And our third one is to provide a forum for community stakeholder interaction and collaboration. So we wanted to make sure we reached out to the community to see what was already being done and to see how we could form partnerships and add on and add value to what they were already doing. And so let's look at some of the successes and highlights of what we've accomplished while being under this grant. I'm going to look at it according to those 3 overarching goals that I've just recently mentioned. And remember, that first one was to increase opportunities for our students to have access to financial education. Along those lines, we have piloted at least 1 program at every single elementary grade level. So we've had a kindergarten. Yes, we start as early as kindergarten, teaching them financial literacy. We've had a 1st grade, a 2nd grade, a 3rd grade, and a 4th grade pilot program that have all been successful and that we've continued along. We've created a K-5 curriculum progression guide, and I should specify it's not just a K-5 curriculum progression guide, it's a K-12 curriculum progression guide. I'm very lucky to collaborate with a lot of national and state leaders in financial education, and I can tell you right now that we are the state leader when it comes to financial education. They always come and talk to us and see what we're doing with financial education before they integrate any programs, and we're one of the national leaders when it comes to financial education. We're one of the only school districts in the country that has a vertically aligned plan from kindergarten up through 12th grade of how we're going to hit each of these students with financial education. So we can be very proud of that. And then in elementary, there's our use of the My Classroom Economy program. That's been our most successful program at the elementary level. It's a token economy that a teacher utilizes in their classroom. It's similar to what teachers have been doing for years in their classroom. The basics of it are that all the kids have jobs and they earn an income for their job. They have expenses, the main expense being they pay rent for their desk. They can incur fines and bonuses, so it works doubles as a classroom management tool. That's where we've got a lot of buy-in, is as a classroom management tool. And then most importantly, they can spend their money. And at the end of every month, we have classroom auctions, or a classroom store is opened up where they learn about impulse buying, and they have some regretful spending, but we want them to learn that in the classroom in kindergarten, first and second grade before they're adults, and they really make some regretful spending. And we actually were able to partner and do a major randomized control trial study on this program. We partnered with the University of Wisconsin. They had gotten funding through the Department of Treasury's Financial Empowerment Fund. And so we did a one trimester long study looking at what were the effects of this program on the students, both financial knowledge and their financial behaviors. And the final report, I'm proud to say, did show very statistically significant positive results, not just on their knowledge or financial knowledge. You got to figure it's going to have some effect on their good effect on their financial knowledge, but it also had a statistically significant positive effect on their financial behaviors. In other words, we talked to their parents at home as well, and their parents are reporting that they would come home and talk about money more. They were more apt to ask about opening up bank accounts more. Right? And so we were very happy with the results of that. And you can see we've scaled up the program since then to the point where I have directly trained 275 teachers at 72 of our elementary schools on how to use this program, and they're currently using it. And I have a pretty good inkling that our numbers are higher than that, as I've heard anecdotally numerous times that it just gets passed down amongst teachers and schools that I haven't hit directly. Also at the elementary level, we do a week-long program called Teach Children to Save Day. This is a partnership with the Florida Atlantic University Center for Economic Education, and we also partner with local financial institutions. We want our children to speak and see and hear from actual bankers or credit union employees. Sometimes it's lawyers that work in the financial industry. And so we go in and we train those financial institution employees on how to deliver this book. We use the book. You can see it up there, Rock Bracken, the Savings Shack. And they go in and they teach a lesson using that book. They're in there for about an hour, and the students are able to interact with them. So we've had a lot of success with that. Overall, we've had 88 different financial professionals from 13 institutions that have visited 150 teachers at 30 of our elementary schools over the last 3 years of that program. Turning our attention to our successes with students at the secondary level, we've started to do some micro-credentialing of students. We use what's called the WISE, that stands for Working in Support of Education, their Certification in Financial Literacy program, the CFL. And we've had just over 1,000 students. We're up to about 1,200 students now at 4 schools. It's a voluntary program at the schools, but we've had 4 schools opt into it that have offered this micro-credential. We've had about an 85% pass rate. And we continue to add new schools so that every single year. We've had just this year, we had 3 new schools opt in to offer in this micro-credential certification program in financial literacy for their students. We've also, in the last 3 years, we've seen the creation of a semester-long elective at the high school level. So we're very proud that we now have a semester-long what's called Personal Financial Literacy elective course that schools can choose to offer. Again, you can see we've been increasing the number that have done that. We had 3 that offered it in the last school year. This year, we're now up to 5 schools that are offering, and we're hoping to continue that trend upward. At the middle school level, we have focused in on either the after-school setting. We've done a lot of things in the after-school setting. The past few summers, we went out to Pahokee Middle School to their after-school program and did a program called Girls Just Want to Have Funds. It was done for girls, obviously, in their after-school program. We've also gone in during the school day and done what's called these Mad City Money reality fairs, where they go in for the day and they're given a situation, an apartment that they're married to, and they have kids, and they have to go into these different booths and make a budget and make spending decisions. So that's been our primary focus at the middle school level. In terms of our successes and highlights, with our second goal of the grant, which was to increase the number of teachers qualified. We hit the ground running from the start in terms of training of teachers. It's actually a little over 1,400 now total units that we've trained in the last few years, which includes, we've taken that out, and it's about 720 individual teachers that have come to one of our specific financial education trainings, and that's kindergarten up through 12th grade. And we know from that we've reached at least 50,000 students. That's a conservative number because that's just in 1 year that we reached 50,000 students. So if we extrapolate that out over future years, it's likely much higher than that. And more importantly, we know that we've hit at least one teacher at 100% of our high schools, at least one teacher at 100% of our middle schools, and we're getting close to the 80% number of teachers that we've trained at our elementary schools, which again, we're very proud considering we started with 0 just a few years ago. We also do a week-long what we call the financial literacy boot camp for our teachers. We do that in the summertime, the first week out of during summer break. We have some dedicated teachers that come in during their summer break for that. And that's a really intensive 4-day long, 6.5 hours a day, where we do 2 things for them. One, we're trying to teach them the content. We bring in professionals, investment professionals, insurance professionals, to really hit them with the content because they need to be comfortable with the material first. And then we also bring in curriculum experts from Florida Atlantic University, from the Fed. We have the Federal Reserve that comes in and brings in experts to give them the proper teaching techniques to then teach that material. We also give them the opportunity to earn a micro-credential. The same company, the Working in Support of Education, WISE, they also do a teacher certification in personal finance. And so it's not easy. Not everybody passes it, but we've had about a 90 to 95% pass rate amongst our teachers, and we currently have about 70 teachers that hold that distinction, and we hope to add about 20 more this summer. Our third goal in the grant was to form those partnerships with the community, provide that forum for community stakeholder interaction and collaboration. And again, we've done that from the beginning. We have a financial literacy advisory board. That advisory board meets quarterly. We have about 20 to 23, 24 members, depending on the exact year. Those members come from our district. We have different departments in our district that have members. We have various financial institutions and credit unions that have members on it. And we also have our community organizations that have any sort of vested interest in financial education also have members on that board. And then we also do strategic partnerships with other organizations that have any sort of vested interest in financial education. Junior Achievement has long had a pretty good footprint within Palm Beach County, so we continue to support the work that they do, along with many other, as you can see, other financial education curriculum providers. No one of these curriculum providers or organization is the solution to financial education. Right? They are all one piece of the solution to financial education, and we've worked with a lot of different groups to come up with that solution. And then along those lines of all the work that we've done, our teachers have earned a lot of awards in recognition of their work with financial education over the past few years. The Florida Council for Economic Education has a number of classroom contests. They have a stock market game, an investment contest. We've had a number of first place state finishes amongst our classrooms. Just last year we had one of our elementary classrooms that finished in first place in the state in a stock market challenge, which was interesting. Just last year at the Governor's Award Program for Excellence in Teaching, we had one of our district employees that was named the Economic Educator of the Year. I was very happy to see that because she was one of the first of our teachers to offer that personal financial literacy elective and really just did a phenomenal job with it and was awarded for that work she did with that. We've also had teachers achieve what they call the Gold Star teacher status by the WISE program because they have such high passing rates on that micro-credentialing certification I've talked about. So we continue to hope that increases. And then anecdotally, I've also, as I said before, we've been recognized as a state and national leader in financial education, and I've been lucky enough to be able to sit on a number of conferences. I've been invited to a number of panels to discuss the work that we've done, including just a few months ago when I was invited to present and sit on a panel at the U.S. Department of Education to talk about the financial education work that we have done. And then I'll end off with sort of what we have planned for next and what we're looking to do next. One is we want to expand that high school elective course. I'm sure you're aware of the the legislation that is currently in front of the Florida legislature that's looking to make a mandatory standalone course for financial literacy. I continue to support that. Even without that, we've still got the high school elective that we're hoping to increase from 5 schools up to 6, 7, 8 as we continue to move forward. So we're building out some of our, working with a group of teachers this semester and into the summer to build out some more support for that course. We're looking to expand our financial literacy micro-credentialing program to reach even more students. We're trying to come up with some creative solutions to incentivize the schools to offer that. We've explored the possibility. I've had some introductory conversation with the state about possibly seeing if we can get it to become eventually an industry certification. It's a long and arduous process, but we've at least had some introductory conversations with the state about that. And then finally, we need some more standards inclusion for elementary and middle. I've talked about the mandate at the high school level. I said there's middle school, there's elementary benchmarks, but they are not mandatory. They are voluntary for schools right now. So we're still working hard, even though they're voluntary, to have more schools include those and infuse those with other subjects. And I will finish with saying that I believe next week on the board agenda, I have proposed to add these middle school standards that we have on the books and create a middle school elective course called Introduction to Personal Financial Literacy that we're hoping to get added to the state course catalog. So I hope you see that and support that next week.
Ms. McQuinn?
Thank you very much. This is, I know it's been important to the board and the business community that our students are well educated in the area of finances. And I know that my son won't appreciate this, but when he went many years ago to the University of Florida, I had to teach him how to write a check, because he truly didn't know anything about, the basics of budget, much less finance. So I know that it's much appreciated, and thank you for your hard work in this. My question is, at the middle school level, and particularly since you had mentioned the potential of an introductory course, at the middle school level and then again at the high school level, is this regular credit or is it advanced or honors?
So if you're talking the core course, there's only the core mandatory course at the high school level is both. There is a regular option, there is an honors option.
Okay, so but then the economics course, but
Correct.
but the actual financial literacy course.
Is an elective in which there is also a regular and an honors option.
Thank you.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. And so first of all, I'm thrilled. I think financial literacy is really an imperative. We have to teach our children while they're in school. And I think it starts really early. I know with my children, the best start they had was a small allowance, and then they went to 2 different elementary schools. One of the elementary schools had a partnership with a local bank where they opened up accounts. And that, I think, was one of the biggest benefits that they had. And I do have 2 questions, by the way. But for this, I don't know if my question is, are we still doing that? And if so, can you let us know later on, which schools do have that type of relationship? Because I do think it starts really young. So are we still doing that you know of?
Yeah, we've had numerous exploratory discussions about that. But no, our schools that used to offer the account, one of the sticking points has been the financial institutions and whether they're custodial or non-custodial.
So as a follow-up, then maybe we can work with the bank that we use for the school district to try and see if we can establish some type of program, because I thought it was invaluable for my children. The other question is, I know Mrs. McQuinn asked about, what level the classes are. We need to make sure that our ESE students are also exposed to this. Because, when my kids graduated, I had to teach both of them how to write checks, how to pay bills, how to function that way. And it shouldn't just be in their life skills classes, because a lot of our ESC students are not in life skills classes. So let's make sure we do it across the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I think this is fantastic. I really do. But my question is, how deep is our reach? So economics is a required high school course for graduation,
Correct.
Right? So can you say that every high school student that's taking economics this year is receiving this information?
Yes, I can say that every student that's taken the economics It's now called Economics with Financial Literacy course. The teachers of that course are required to instruct that material.
Okay, they're required to.
Yes.
But I think the number was 88% had been trained, or
It was
did I
at the
misread that?
elementary level.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was 100% at high school.
We've trained 100% of schools, correct?
Okay, and so is there any circling back in terms of accountability? Do we know that that's happening?
Well,
You answered the question. Okay, so I want to go on.
well, this is required, no, but it's required by statute at the economics class. So, yes, it's built into our scope of sequence. You know, we monitor those standards at the school level and what's being taught.
Right, and infusion is in statute too, right? So I'm just saying.
Yes, it
Like, how do
is.
we know, right? Okay, so then the other thing is, I think, so social studies, it's in the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards for social studies, 4th, 8th, 9th through 12th.
Correct.
Do you know how deep the penetration is in those grades?
In 4th and 8th, I know how deep the penetration is in terms of how many teachers we've trained, right? I know that in middle school, we've trained at least one teacher at 100% of our middle schools. So they are equipped to be able to integrate the financial education standards at the 8th grade level, although they are voluntary. They are equipped to do that. And that's the same answer at the 4th grade level. We've have 78% of our elementary schools have at least one teacher trained and they are definitely equipped with the ability to be able to do that. But again, it's voluntary at that level.
Okay, and one more. So I want to look at, really, I'm trying to look at it from the kids' point of view. And so if it's one teacher trained at those grade levels, we don't know actually if they're providing that instruction, but then there's all those other teachers who we know are not because they haven't been trained. So in terms of all these different components, can you, in the foreseeable future, provide us with the information on which schools have which component?
I can.
And then the other question that I have is, was there any conscious effort to target the schools that are less likely to have families that themselves are financially literate?
Sure, I can answer that. Yeah, again, I stress the voluntary program that we offer to all schools. But I will stress in terms of that question is that, yes, we have one of our funders, which we have restricted dollars that is only to Title I schools, so that we make sure that we are focusing a good amount of our efforts to get our programs into Title I schools. And the funding is earmarked just for that.
Okay, and so great. So when you provide that follow-up information, can you maybe highlight the Title I schools?
Sure.
Because number one, all Title I is not Title I. And then also just the level of penetration there. Like, it seems to me that essentially the return on investment will be greater in the schools that have, 95% free lunch or something, right? So, okay. Well, I mean, I think this is really, really great work. I hope to see the penetration go deeper, and I would love to talk to you more about expanding the after-school component. So,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Superintendent?
First of all, as we wrap up, I want to thank Aaron for all of your work. This is all new to me, but now my son isn't in one of these classes, but obviously it's permeating throughout the school without him being involved with that, whatever teacher is trained. And it's always interesting when your 10-year-old challenges you on your own budget at home. But I think that's part of all of our process because I'm not completely financially literate. And so I think part of us is sort of that challenge between our own children and us learning as a family. So, as we go grocery shopping, say, hey, listen, we have $50 to buy groceries. What cereal are you and your sister going to eat? And it's part of that conversation. And, so as we think about the future of this work, figuring out, I think to all the board's point, you heard two board members say, when my kids were graduating, I taught them how to write checks. So as we think about our parent university systems and other after-school opportunities to get parents also involved, because you just said it's a national problem. And so how do we not only use our children to help put some pressure on our parents and families to help them, but we create a real mechanism to give our parents access to some of this information. So my hat goes off to you, Aaron. Great work.
Thank you.
Mr. Oswald, I'm really, really proud of what I saw today.
So after the meeting, I'm going to ask you about a particular school because my grandson seems to think that his Apple Pay tied to my credit card is financial literacy. I think he needs some lessons from you guys.
Right.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
work. Appreciate it.
And again, thank you to our partners in this. I know there's someone that couldn't be here today.
Yes, our next project will be, as the team comes forward,